Sing and go around my neck. When we got into music, and the reason why we got into, well, it's not the reason why we got into music, but the reason why we became fully invested in like independent and underground culture was because, like, growing up as kids, we grew up in an industrial town, a small town, and as kids who like were misfits, really, we struggled to fit in, and we found a culture that embraced us, which was underground culture, because everyone felt like so all of the whether you're a punk rocker or a metal kid, or you're like grunge, or you're a skater, anything, or a goth, anything that was like you looked down upon by mainstream culture, you found a welcoming place, and that was the most inspiring and actually the most accepted I've ever felt in my life.
But because it did have an infrastructure as well, though, didn't it? You know what I mean? It had like its own like economy and infrastructure.
The underground was functional underground.
Yeah, whereas I mean, there's been no like. It's unavoidable. You've had to, you have to accept this stuff now. Yeah. You know what I mean, it's like there is no, there's no like way around it. You know, I mean, I feel like if anything, since since things have gone like more and more online, it's actually made me a lot more private. You know what I mean, which is kind of a shame, but for my own sake. But it's. I don't know. It's weird because a lot of the things that, like Gary was saying, a lot of the things that made me want to do it and that I fell in love with has been eroded, and some of the things that's been replaced is stuff that is actually antithetical to the things that I actually liked about it in the first place. But you do have to adapt, and you have to think like, you know, it's just the way that stuff is, and if that's how people are enjoying consuming stuff now, it's like it doesn't really matter how I feel about it. That's not going to affect any difference on it whatsoever. So
the next thing is that people are just going to like want you to wear a camera all day and just literally watch you 24/7 streaming, and you're sleeping and going about your everyday business. That's coming. That's going to happen next?
Well, to finish the thought that I was having originally, though, like the when you had that functioning underground, we didn't elect to be part of a subculture, but you found a welcoming environment, and that was somewhere where you found that you thrived, and you found a community. I think the thing that I struggle with now, and being part of that meant that like you didn't have to be part of mainstream culture, and that's the thing that I struggle with online stuff now, is the fact that anything that like we put out, or anything that we're partaking in online or in through social media is essentially just part of me. That's a mainstream endeavor, and we're not, as people, we're not comfortable with like selling yourself. You have to be a salesperson. I've never been comfortable with that. So that's where the rub is for us. I mean, we love like having a fan community. We love communicating with people who understand you. That's great. But the fact that like everything's metric oriented, it means that you're all basically like just. It's almost like you're just competing with the mainstream sort of
even if you
paradigm.
Don't subscribe to that, you can't help but go onto a digital streaming platform and see, this many people listen to
it's like a leaderboard.
Of course,
it's fundamentally like a leaderboard. I think that like everything's so metric oriented now that like the underground no longer has that sort of ability to translate like that. You just have to have like some kind of like freak hit, or just be good at selling.
Also,
yourself.
like your apprenticeship is also done. It's not done under the radar. It's done. It's on the same platform as like what it would have been. Yeah, and so I mean, I guess for some people, it's easy to just like immediately write it off as a failure or as a bad job or whatever. But it's like, you know. Like but if before we got signed, or before we started doing stuff on like even through indie labels in the early 2000s, we'd like gone through like years and years of like
essentially an apprenticeship that you didn't know you were taking.
Yeah.
Right.
And it does feed into that, because if your first forays into music is self-promotion, as time goes by, you're only going to become a bit more of a peacock, really. You know what I mean? And that's. I think that's an insidious kind of effect, like it, you know, like. But I don't know. That's just from my experience. I would not give up the time that we had toiling in obscurity, because it makes you who you are, you know,
for sure.
But you at least knew what your root was.
What like version of Cribs are you like now in 2025? Like, is there like can you like look back retrospectively and be like, okay, that was kind of like Mac 1, that was Mac 2.
Yeah, just philosophical.
I wouldn't know. I mean, like, clear-eyed as well, I would say. Like, very, like, I feel like a lot of the noise and a lot of the baggage that came along in the, you know what I mean? Like, the whole lifestyle, all that stuff that, like you didn't realise that you were carrying around, like, all that stuff is being washed away, I think, at this point now. And we're kind of in a... Yeah, like more philosophical. I mean, obviously, when you know, every time you make a record, you tend to look around and think, well, you know, this is my life and this is how I feel about it now and all this kind of stuff. But I feel like this for this record, it's the one where we're kind of like in the most different place to any of the rest of them, because the rest of them almost was, you know, you were living the lifestyle and just like, you know, going from record to tour, and you never were questioning why you were doing it, because you didn't know any different. And I feel like we've had more of like time to like question ourselves and decide like what we do like about it, what we don't like about it, you know, and like reassess with in a more selective kind of manner, you know.
What
Night Network sounded like that. Night Network sound like that was sort of a bit of a return in a way, right?
Well, Night Network was made because, I mean, the environment that we made Night Network in, like, was one of like where we weren't necessarily, we had made a conscious decision that we wanted to continue as a band, which might sound a little bit dramatic, but what I mean is by that is that, like, we'd been through some ups and downs before that, and so it was a bit of a litmus test, was that record, and so like we decided,
and it worked.
Yeah,
the litmus test was green or whatever good color is.
Yeah, it was really restorative, because the way that we worked was how it was really reminiscent of the early days, and I know that that's a bit of a cliche now, but it was really reminiscent of the early days. We were really proud of that record. Now that the irony being that, like, the pandemic hit right around the time when we were thinking about releasing it, so it felt like we got the rug pulled from us under us again at that point. But as a result, like, once it had been released, we had a period of time before, like, it's been 5 years since that record, and
it doesn't feel like it, does it?
No, it does. You got that 2 year like lockdown thing, kind of like sort of like blasted like a negative space in like everyone's brain or something. But I think that's where the philosophical element kicks in, because it's given us like the ability to we're really, really keenly aware of like who we are as a band, and like, and I mean that like in positive and negatives way. We know exactly. We're really, really lucky and privileged in some ways. There's also some other ways where I feel like we've been kind of, you know, where we get marginalized as well, and it's really hard. It's really, really hard to change those preconceptions.
But I think we're carrying around a lot less of our own baggage now. You know what I mean? I feel like we were carrying around some baggage like related to that kind of stuff. Whereas now it's like, well, if other people are, well, we can't do all about that.
I've got to ask, and this is quite a direct question, so feel free, you know, I'm not going to ask about the contents of your bank accounts, but when you are in a band now where, you know, you did come from that time where you may be getting like 6-figure advances for an album deal, and the world's just changed so much now, like, the three of you like live off the Cribs, right?
Yeah, that's why we never got to take our foot off the gas. You know what I mean? It'd be nice to
initially, but you reap those rewards later, and that it goes back to what we were saying about that apprenticeship. The way that we learned as a band, like, we went really incrementally up the ladder, and so we knew every time we took a step up, we knew what we did and didn't need. So by the time we were playing Brixton Academy. Actually, no. A better example is we played Leeds Arena, which it's a big arena,
that's great,
you know. But we knew
Elton John had just been there.
Elton John was there the night before. But because we knew we were only coming over from Wakefield, we were just like, well, we just took our van over and loaded, you know, the backline was loaded into the van, and we took the van over, and the crew guys, when we arrived, they had like 40 local crew guys outside expecting like articulate lorries to show up.
There was a load of forklift trucks driving around as well, with basically nothing to do. And
they were really surprised to see that. But that's to illustrate the fact that like on our way up, we knew what we didn't need for each situation. And we've been really good at like being able to scale stuff up and down. So then, you know, essentially, it's allowed us to live off the band well, because we've never lived outside our means. We've always been like really, like, you know, we come from a independent background, so we're really cognizant and savvy about, you know, not on a business level, but just on a ethos level. It's our ethos.
We're quite happy being Spartan anyway, aren't we? You know what I mean? It's always just been our personalities and characters to kind of like, you know,
because you spend more time together and you vibe off it more. When you're on a bus in your bunks and you're all detached, you don't feel like you're on a mission anymore. I think
it's our upbringing as well, though, being like working class from the north as well. It's like, just because like you see some other bands show up and they've got like all these extravagant things, it's like you really don't need it. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, all you need is your instruments. It's like you don't need all these excesses, and I think that's served as well, because like we can go out on tour, and you know, being in a band, a lot of the time it's hand to mouth sort of thing. It's like when you're not on tour, you know, like you were saying, like you know, that's how a band like us make our bread and butter. But like as you're not on tour, like, you know, stuff, you know, you're aware you're not going out and working sort of thing. So
but we own our entire catalogue now, which has been like.
Isn't there a story behind this?
There's a long story behind. Yeah, it's like so.
You really educated yourself.
Yeah, well, essentially, we've been on that treadmill for like so many years that, like, you're not really looking under the hood, essentially, and it got to the point where nobody really wanted to deal with it. But
we're talking like rights,
ownership,
usage,
rights, like all
the legal stuff.
All that kind of stuff, and after 24/7 Rockstar shit, we had a period of time where we were, you know, we weren't working with people that we'd been working with before, through, like, you know, on all sides of the business, and so we just decided, like, okay, well, we're just going to look into this ourselves and figure it out, and it was really intimidating, because, like, you know, you talk about years and years worth of books, but then not just the books, it's like the rights get sold, and different licensing deals get done, and companies get into deals with other companies, and so there's so many myriad layers to it. No one wanted to deal with it, but it's
bands aren't aware of it either. Like, they get to the point where a lot of, particularly young bands, they're just happy to be out on the road, like, you know. Touring, but like all this stuff
is its
behind,
own reward, isn't it?
For years,
all this stuff behind the scenes, it's like there's just people who are just constantly like taking pieces of the pie, and like you're not aware of it. So obviously, like, you know, Gary became a little bit more familiar with things. And
well, it becomes crass to talk about money, and it's antithetical to the idea of art. Like, commerce and art just don't go well together. So I think a lot of musicians, their idealism, like for us, it was our idealism. We had an idealism towards, like,
against you.
Ultimately, over the years, it ends up working against you, because you think you feel like.
What's that idealism in like a sentence? How would you word it?
The idealism is the fact that you believe that that it's not a business. That like it's that
you remember. Like listening to records in your bedroom and it just being like the only thing that mattered, you know what I mean? And you still view it as that because that's how you felt about it when you were young.
But to the people that you work with, it's a business, and
but the people you're selling records to, we feel the same as you. You know, we're in our bedrooms.
But that's what I mean. So it's like you see, like you still view it that way, and you still want. I always imagined that everyone saw it that way, and everyone who worked in the industry saw it that way, and had that idealism. That is just naivety.
Yeah, because to the other people you work with, they do it. It is a business. They're not doing it for it doesn't mean they're not music lovers, or it doesn't mean that the Philistines. I'm not saying that.
No, but they've learned that you've got.
But their primary reason for doing it is it's a business thing, and that there's always this idea that, like, as a musician, if you start thinking about the business side of things, it's going to affect the art. Now, like, you know, it does, like, it definitely does. but we had time out, and so at the time I started looking into it because I was like, someone's got to sort this out now. It ended up that started like basically like 2.5 years of like a really miserable process. But I've always felt like what the big business, well, what I learned in the process was that the big businesses, they depend on the idea that either A, you're not going to know what you're doing, or B, that you're going to get demoralized and they're going to just wait you out, because they have lawyers on retainer, they have like all the time in the world, they have resources to like, you know, to put into this. But us guys, we've always been DIY, and we are very working class, and I think there was an underestimation of how much work we were willing to put into this, and like it got to a point where we essentially like were representing ourselves as lawyers, really, and as accountants.
It's
as
like a
well.
film plot.
But you get swamped with paper. Is it like on Better Call Saul, where they do like a big document dump on them and stuff? So like just like kill time. Like
people do
the scenario
that.
you end up in.
You'll get like 15 years worth of like stuff dumped onto you.
But then you'd get pissed off and you'd think, if they think I'm not going to fucking read all this stuff, I'm just going to start reading it now. You know what I mean?
It becomes a vendetta. Yeah, it did. Yeah, and it was challenging. Which is why Night Network came like. So that's why I said there was a period of time before Night Network where we had to assess if we wanted to do it anymore or not. Because had we not got the catalog back, that would have been. I don't think I would have been able to like get into a relationship, like putting a record out after that. I feel like
so you won the back catalogue back.
Yeah,
you basically went to court.
Yeah, with two. Well, we didn't. It didn't go to court because we had our shit together so much that like it just didn't. It was never necessary.
It's one of them things where like, you know, we got something, we'd like done a deal, but then somebody else had sold that deal to somebody else different, and we're like, well, that's not what we did in the first place. It's kind of you know, like, I mean, I know it's completely different, but it's like when you're reading in the news about like when Taylor Swift were getting like all her kind of rights back, it felt like, you know, something on a obviously like different area of the park sort of thing.
But it's like a puzzle, familiar, you know those little slide puzzles that you had when you were a kid. It'd be a picture of something, and it's like what it'll be is you'll move one piece around, and then you'll realize, oh, well, now that's out of place, and then you have to keep like. It takes a long time to put it together, but we got it to the point where we knew it inside out. We could make the argument ourselves, and we did. And we actually ended up having to do that with two companies. But we did prevail on both counts. The thing is, though, since then and since understanding it, I have started to. Like I've actually looked over a few other bands' contracts and like tried to assist them, because I think I feel like there's a moral obligation on that too. Like when you know that how that stuff works, you know, if somebody else is like having those I mean, I don't want to look at other people's contracts really, but if someone else is having issues with it, I'll be like, yes, send it along and I'll have a look at it, because
but you had to. It's like we needed to get this stuff in a row, because it was always going to come up, because I feel like before we do every record these days, there's a period of like where it's almost like an existential crisis where you think, am I going to have to do this forever?
Right, exactly.
Do I want to do another album? Am I going to have to do this forever? And because usually I'd say after Night Network, after any record, once you finish touring it, there's a period where you're not thinking about the next record at all. Like, you know, like you're not like, you don't know what you're going to do with it. You're not motivated for it. And during that period, you naturally just start thinking, oh man, am I going to have to do this forever? Like, you know, do I want to do it forever? And so you get all that, you know, that was an opportune time for us to figure stuff like that out and ask those questions. And then, you know, we always end up in a place where we all of a sudden the feeling comes back and you start wanting to make another record and you have a clear idea of what you want to do with it. You know, I think that would be the only time that we would like walk away from it, is when that feeling doesn't.
But just
to
clarify that point, that like what we mean there is like we always want to do it and we're privileged to do it, and that's great. But if you start feeling like you have to do it,
your relationship
that's when your relationship with it changes, and that's how you keep that idealism. If you don't feel like you have to do it, it means that you do it when you want to do it, which is, to be honest, that's why there is that's why there has been longer gaps between our records, because it's like it used to be a case of like strike while iron's hot, getting back in the studio, this and that's going on, and like to be honest, we were living in a musical culture that was like so fast moving that we were constantly on anyway.
Yeah, and we weren't questioning anything.
We weren't ever questioning
why we were doing it. It was like, we have to do this. Like it's all you knew.
But now I wouldn't want to be in a position where there's somebody's like pushing you to get in the studio because you need to do it. Because like, so yeah, we always go through that period of self-reflection afterwards where you wait until you feel like you want to do it again, and during that time you will, if you felt like you had to do it, you wouldn't want to do it, and it would be, it would start to feel like it should never be an obligation. It's such an amazing thing that you want to keep it precious.
It's kind of like that. It's almost like that thing like when I was younger, like what I loved more than anything was laying in my bedroom listening to records. That was the thing that I loved the most, and and doing shows and meeting new people and stuff like that. And it's almost like when you actually start doing it professionally, it's like on The Simpsons where Homer has to eat every donut in the world. It's like, oh, you like listening, you like playing music, you like doing shows, right? Okay, just do that now every night for like 20 years or something. It's like
it's almost like a test to be like, how much do you actually care about this?
How much to yourself,
how much you care about, how much you love it, and also how long can you keep it being something that you genuinely engaging with?
I worked in like over the summer holidays in a kitchen washing up to buy a guitar, and
just like Bryan Adams.
Yeah, exactly. And but it is cliche, though, isn't it? Because everyone had to do that. I played that thing till my fingers bled, man. But we everyone would chip in so you could rehearse. You would rehearse on a Saturday.
Band members, you put 250 in each, so you could get a tenner together for 2 hours practice.
But none of you had any money. None of none of us had. That's why everyone had to throw in to do these rehearsals. But no one minded doing it because it was a social thing. It got people together, and we enjoyed doing it. But the main thing is it gave you hope. It meant that you had something that you were doing that, like, even if you never got anywhere, and even if no one ever came to the shows, you still had that hope that something might happen that would change stuff. That has been taken away from people now, and I think that's really sad. And I think that music, like the creation of music, has become more of a solo endeavor as well, which I think it's like it loses a lot of its natural appeal in that circumstance. I think it does make it so there's more of a barrier to entry, I guess.
I grew up going to ska punk shows where there was like 8 members. And I love that because it was like, if that band played in the youth centre, I was lucky enough to grow up in the Tampa Youth Centre.
Right.
That's a house party.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like our band practice when we were kids, right? Our band practices, we would rent a place called Audio Zone. It's £5 an hour. And we'd rent it on a Saturday for 2 hours. Like there was 4 band members. It was $2.50 each, so you could afford it. But all of your mates who were into like Nirvana or Green Day or whatever, they would come and hang out at your practice because they just wanted to watch you play. So it was like not just me and Ryan and our 2 friends at the time, but it was their friends and our friends. Sometimes Ross would be there, and it was like because it was a place where everyone could go, and it became a communal thing. And the thing about making music with your friends was like, it would sometimes be their enthusiasm and the people that you would start bands with, the people who shared that same desire and hope to for something a little bit better. Yeah, and it did give you hope. Like Ryan was saying, it might have been futile. We would put gigs on in Wakefield, right? And it would just be our friends and our girlfriends and who would come along to it. But you really felt like, oh, I've made an active effort to better myself, and also your friends all had a really good time as well, and that was rewarding. You know, you felt like you were giving them something
for sure
to do as well. You know,
that's beautiful, isn't it? Like
it really isn't, and it's one of them things where when I talk about this in this sort of poptimist environment, people will be like, oh, all right, granddad, you know what I mean? Like, and there's a general sneer towards it. But for working class kids and for working class youth who don't have anything, it was so powerful, and even though like the Cribs have like got to experience more than I ever thought we ever would, I still look back on those days like as like sort of the purest days of my life, because of my engagement with my friends and my bandmates and all the other local bands who you play with, because you needed each other. You needed to. We didn't have a PA, so you'd borrow another band's PA, and they didn't have a van, so they'd borrow your van, whatever it might be. Those relationships were so pure and so like mutually beneficial that like that's why the Cribs have always been a DIY and community oriented band. It's never been vanity or ego or solo endeavor. It's never been about us. It's always been about like I really miss that feeling where everyone's interactions with each other was that pure, you know.
Brothers Don't Break.
Well, exactly.
It's a really great track, and you feel it. And anyone who's got siblings know that. I mean, I've never, being in band with your siblings, that's pretty unique. Experience.
I mean, it's all we've ever really known, but I do think that it is something that has kept the band together, because I think if we weren't brothers, someone would have gone by now. You know what I mean? Something like it has been a stabilizing
you're defensive
force
of each other. Yeah. Like it's a real blessing and a real curse, because you get to experience everything together, which is amazing, and you get to live it through each other. So when anything really good happens, it's like I can enjoy it not just for myself, but for these guys as well. But then when if there's like negativity or people are sneering at you or like trying to put down your lived experience and looking down on like your working class roots, or like people used to really focus on like our accents and our like a perceived lack of education because you had a heavy accent,
which was ridiculous anyway, because like you can't make those assumptions anyway. I mean, like me and Gary like played in orchestras for years before
trained. Ross was classically trained, but
you were getting stoned before the choir session.
Before orchestra, it was, man, I'm telling you, that is a good time. Like, that is a good time. It's intense. You know what I mean? It's like kind of like, you're hanging on by like,
it's like being in an ocean that's raging and you're just like bobbing around like a cork. It's like, it's so cool. For years, I didn't really acknowledge. We didn't really perceive that who we were and how we didn't really fit in like in London whatsoever, for example, because like we were coming down from a small town and our experiences had been on this like local punk scene and like this idealistic sort of viewpoint. And it was only after all the business dealings that I went through that I got the chance to be able to like realize like why the Cribs were always like, why we ran into as many hurdles as what we did in the early days, because I think we were perceived as being either abrasive or difficult or whatever it might have been. But the only reason why is because like when we came into music, we thought like we owed it to everyone and to ourselves, and also we knew no other way of doing it than to be like as honest and unfiltered as what we could be. But it was only later when we realised actually that the music industry is more. It's much more filtered than what you think. So like when because people are trying to present the best versions of themselves, and it's only then that I realized like, oh yeah, like we were weird. Not we were weird, but like I can see why our personalities were challenging for people, because we were very working class to the degree where like we wouldn't let anyone do anything for us. Like we did everything ourselves. We never really went along with perceived wisdom. We'd always be like, I don't really agree with that. Or that we used to think in our brain, how are people in Wakefield going to like? This was a latent thought, but how are people in Wakefield going to think if they see us doing this, and this? We'll go home and we'll be like, who do you think you are? You know what I mean? And that was baggage that we carried around that we didn't realize we were carrying around. I wouldn't change it.
Yeah. But also, I think a lot of the cliches and stereotypes that you hear about are also like completely true. They're there 100%. For like a reason. And like, I feel like we've fallen down so many of those potholes that you should be able to see coming. And it's like,
but that's because your idealism ultimately gets exploited by business.
Yeah, it's your idealism that takes you down those, and you're also going around with imposter syndrome a lot of the time, thinking, "No, I'm not as hardcore as like this," and then you look back and you're like, "Man, like it's sometimes I look back on like some of the years of the band, and it's scary, you know. But
it's good to trust yourself, isn't it? Be like, what have I learned? What's common sense? What can I see in front of me?
Yeah,
well, but we didn't know any other way, really. Like we came out of Wakefield really conditioned, but we didn't realize we were conditioned, and I think that it's only in hindsight that we recognize that. But we didn't know any other way of how to do stuff, and to be honest, like even though, like Rai said, we did hit quite a few hurdles and fall down a few potholes. We don't regret it, because ultimately it was always really honest. You know, it might have been like raw and a little bit near the knuckle at times, but it was always really honest. And it's like, so, you know, there's probably things that we could have done better, but like at least I don't feel like we were ever phony. You know what I mean?
It's always like things like being anti-rock star or anti-rockist and all this kind of stuff, and then you look back and you're like, fucking hell, man, I hate so many of those cliches while trying to avoid them. I just can't. Like, how did that happen?
You feel and raw is a cliche word, but you just feel that in Cribs Records, and like that will never die.
Well, I'd love. I mean, I really appreciate that, and I'd love to say that that's true, because to be honest, it's every time we make a record, the only thing that we really care about is that that like when we look back on it in years to come, we're like, yeah, that's who we were at that time. You know what I mean? Because that you're so lucky to get to make records and document your life like that, that you don't want to look back on it and be like, oh, that was like an airbrushed version of who I am. Yeah, no, but it might read or sound or look better, but it wasn't actually like who we were at that time. Like, but it's so much better to be able to look back and be like, when I listen to our records, I'm like, oh yeah, that's like, I remember exactly what we would, like, how we felt and everything, like, and you know,
it's like you listen to the new fellas and it's like so fast, and it's just bang, 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 bang. There's one song after another, and we didn't think we were doing that at the time. There's a reason why it's that way, you know what I mean? And I'm like, and I'm kind of glad, because like we didn't realize we were, you know, whatever. It just represents where we were, and you take some kind of satisfaction out of that.
Yeah. Thanks so much for talking about it. There's more than 101 jobs in that, innit?
Oh, I did talk about the working in the kitchen, washing.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a sort of like freelance lawyer in.
Oh, yeah.
Cheers for watching. This is 101 Part-Time Jobs. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, and all podcast apps. We've done interviews with Aurora, Kneecap, Idols, Lauren Maybury of Churches, and loads more. So tap into 101 Part-Time Jobs on Spotify, Apple, and all podcast apps.